So this is the second project on Free Code Camp, and it's going to be a it's going to be um, learn the basics of CSS by building a cafe menu. So we're building a cafe menu, and this is our kind of your first. If this is your first time coding, this will be your first chance of learning CSS, which I've discussed in past videos for people that might already know some CSS and just kind of learning the basics. So I'll sprinkle in, super basic videos with more advanced videos. I know Kevin Powell does stuff like that. So he has really advanced stuff and then really basic stuff. And so this is basic. So, when I say basic, I mean, it's basic in relativity to how hard most languages are to learn. So we'll start here with add the doc type HTML tag and an HTML element with the English to your code. So every document you create, every HTML document, which is the backbone of your website, it's not the styling. The styling is the CSS. The structure of the code goes in any file that, like right here, it says index.html. That's going to be your homepage on pretty much every website. That is not a framework like React or Next.js or Rails or Laravel. Any of just basic HTML and CSS. This is how you do it. So you add your doc type HTML. That's important for SEO and for screen readers. HTML and close it with HTML. So everything is going to go inside this right here, and we're going to give it a lang attribute of English. If it was like Spanish, like ES, then it would know that to read it as Spanish. Nice. Actually, I'm going to break this video up into 3 parts. So yeah, add a head element within the HTML element so you can add a title, and the title should be cafe menu. So we talked about this in the last video. We have a head one. So inside, how the structure of it usually or should work is you have your HTML. So inside your HTML, you have your head, and then you have your body. So everything in the head is kind of like your title, meta description, favicon, the char set, so UTF-8, all the meta information about the site, stuff that's not going to be displayed on the page itself, but it is important for the Google and indexing and stuff, will go in your head. But body will be all of the stuff that's actually going to be on the page itself. So add a head element within the HTML element so you can add a title. Element. So we're going to add a title within there. So it's going to be title, and it's going to be cafe menu. Okay. And so the reason I'm passing all these right away is because, or most of them, is because I've done this before. This is how I personally learned myself. So you might not be getting it right the first time. And you can use like this, like what I'm doing right here. You can use a video like this to help you, or you go on GitHub, and GitHub has the answers to all these as well. But what you're trying to learn is that you can do it yourself with minimal looking up, that you don't have to look up the answer verbatim, and that you can take what you've learned and apply it to a project as a freelance project or a work project for your for a client or for your boss. So if you can start knowing how to do everything related to HTML and CSS, it's going to be very hard for them to put anything by you that you won't be able to know how to do statically. Now, when you start getting dynamic with moving parts and stuff in JavaScript, there's millions of ways they can stump you, but it's very hard to stump someone who, when it's just on a static site, when it's just HTML and CSS, and that's what you're promising the client. So if you're promising the client, I'm going to give you an HTML and CSS website, and it's going to have X, Y, and Z, and they can't put too much by you if that's exactly what you're promising. So don't over promise, and always over deliver. So yeah, that's good. I'm just saying all that because that's the goal you have in mind of doing this, is that you can do it as a job, basically. And it takes a while. I spent a year of not making any money doing this to get to the point that I'm at right now. So it takes a while. And I would say definitely have a job that you're working in addition to doing this. So this is something you do on the side until it slowly transitions into hopefully being what you do full time. But for me, it's always going to be something that I half at. So I'm gonna do my virtual assistant work, and then I'm also going to do half of this work as well. So inside the head tag, nest a meta element with an attribute char set, and give it a UTF-8. And these things are just the word I was looking for in the last video. I said icing on the cake. They're formalities. These are formalities that are important for Google to read. To prepare to create some actual content, add a body element below the head element. So we're going to add, not within the head, but below the head, we're going to add a body. And think of this kind of like a person. It's the head of the person and then the body of the person. So, yeah. It's time to add some menu content. Add a main element within the existing body. Main. So we added a main in our last one. We're using a main in this one as well. It's not totally necessary, but it just helps you subdivide the content a little more. Like when you're doing a footer, you would add a footer below the main. But we don't need to do all that right now. And when I code my own projects for people, I just use divs. Honestly, I don't even use main. But if you really want to make it where it's organized as best as possible, so you yourself can read it, and if someone else needs to pick up where you left off, you want to always indent and separate things in a nice, orderly fashion. The name of the cafe is Camper Cafe. Add an H1 element that says Camper Cafe. And so this is all still HTML. When we bring in CSS, that's when we're going to be able to change the color of the text and change the center of the text, put the H1 inside of a div, or those kind of things. Center a div, color a div, background color, borders, changing the styles of the lists, things like that. To let visitors know the cafe was founded in 2020, add a P element below the H1 element with the text established 2020. P established 2020. And I know you might be watching other people on YouTube, or you might have people that are friends that are trying to do coding, and you feel like you get lost in the sauce when you are interacting with them and it's getting competitive about who knows what faster and who can learn more. And I would really stress, when you're learning coding, lock yourself in a room and watch people that know what they're doing who don't have egos. And that is the best way to learn. And put your ego aside and do things one by one and make a list upon list of what you're learning, and then test yourself and go back and test it and keep testing it until you know it, or you know what to look up. So if you get to a section like this, I get to step 7 and I don't know what to do at all, that's not a good sign. It's okay when you're starting, but you should get to a point where I know exactly what to Google, that without Googling the exact answer, but I know exactly what to Google that can get me the answer without knowing the exact answer. So because that's the exact thing that's going to happen to you when you're working for a client. You might encounter something that you don't know how to do, there isn't going to be an exact answer because it's for them. They made it up, but you will need to know how to find the answer. And so being resourceful is really important when it comes to coding. So, because you're not going to remember everything, and you watch those videos from Kevin Powell and whoever else, and I guarantee you they don't memorize every single thing they're doing. They have to look a lot of it up. But they test it. They do a lot of testing, and then they get good at it. So yeah. There are 2 sections on the menu: one for coffees, one for desserts. Add a section element within the main, so you have a place to put all the coffees available. So section. Create an H2 element in the section and give it the text coffee. H2 coffee. So as you can see on our right-hand side here, it's starting to get built out a little bit. So you're seeing the order of things. And here's the ad. There's going to be ads coming on every probably 10 steps. So maybe 2 more ads on this video and then 2 on the next 2 videos as well. You could donate to this if you're working on this. It'll make it faster and less annoying. But I don't donate because I'm just cheap. But and I've already finished this, so I'm just doing this to help you guys and hopefully promote my business and what we do. And maybe you'll want to post your code that you write on our site. That would be great. So if you learn and you can make money on our site, getting paid to post your code as a freelance coder, that would be awesome. That's kind of my goal here. Up until now, you've been limited regarding the presentation and appearance of the content you create. To start taking control, add a style element within the head element. So we're going to add a style. So this is where you start adding your CSS file. So your CSS file, or if you were using it, or a JavaScript file, would go in the style. But right now we're gonna write an inline style. So you can write CSS on the HTML page itself, or you can create a separate file to store all your CSS. So we're gonna do it all within the HTML for now. So what you're doing here is how CSS works. It's very simple, and it's the same pattern for everything you want to do. You take the HTML element that you want to style. So for instance, we want to style the H1, and you put it in you put a brackets after it, and then you're going to put a property so what you want to do to that element, and then the specific thing you're going to do to it. So what we want to do is we want to text align it. So we want to use the text align property, and the specific thing we want to do in regards to aligning it is we want to center it. So that's what you do, and it centers it right there. So there's other ways to do this. So right now we're just using H1. If H1 had a class or an ID of a certain value, if it had an ID of H1, it would be hashtag H1. If it had a class of H1, it'd be .H1. But since it's just H1, this is saying that every H1 element that has H1 in it in the document, we are aligning center with this. So, and it does that. So that's good. And like I said, maybe I've said this, that when you start seeing stuff move around on the screen and you say, I know exactly how I can change that, and you do it and it works, that is a very powerful and rewarding feeling. It's just like anything, when you're riding a bike and you finally can say, I can do this on command at any time. That's a good feeling. Now you're going to second guess yourself sometimes, and there's going to be people there that want to catch you every time you second guess yourself, but there's going to be people there that are also going to give you a chance to figure it out yourself. Those are the people you want to spend time around. And if you're working by yourself, you don't have to worry about all these doubters or people that like you or whoever it is. Just work by yourself and give yourself your own feedback loop, so you know what your goals are and are you achieving them, are you not. Don't frustrate yourself, and always set goals that you can achieve or a little bit higher and slowly work up. Like for me, I have this fear and this feeling that I'll never be able to fully learn Next.js or Ruby on Rails because just my mind can't quite go that far. But then again, I was a baseball player. I never thought I could throw a baseball at 88 miles an hour. I eventually got there because I obsessed over it. I committed myself to it. So if you commit yourself to something, you can surpass limits that you didn't even know you could surpass. But to get there, you can't. Yes, you set the goal vaguely way out there, but every day you start right here and you work one step at a time from here forward, and you see how far you can go. Never get too far ahead of yourself. Never look back too much. Just be right in the moment. And your mind will know if it knows. You'll know if you know. If you don't know, look it up. Don't panic. Just look it up. That's why you're on the computer to begin with, is you're looking stuff up. That's how you got here, is because you were looking stuff up. Continue to look things up and slowly start to build your knowledge base based on what the computer is telling you. Then you can start telling the computer things. And then you realize you're starting to create the code yourself. And what you're eventually going to write is stuff totally original that you've written. If that's the point, you want to be original, this is the way to do it. But you have to do it slowly by starting to copy others and putting it all together into becoming a master. It's like mastering the English language. You learn it by I learned it by copying and imitating people, what they say, and recognizing, when they say this happens, or when they say this, we feel this way. It's the same way with coding. You're coding, and then it's doing something to the screen, and you're getting used to the patterns that are being applied, and you're testing different things to see what it works. Except the person you're interacting with is a computer; it's not a person. So that's the difference. And I know you can say, well, it's antisocial, whatever. If you don't like socializing that much, this is a great way to put your energy in, because there's lots to do here and there's many things to learn, and there's other people just like me or way smarter than me that have come up with all kinds of things it's fascinating. If you love this kind of stuff and you aren't worried about the social nature of it, it's really fun to dive into. So yeah, let's continue. All right, so in the previous step, you used a type selector to style the H1 element. Center the content of the H2 and the P elements by adding a new type selector for each one of the existing. So if you wanted to, this is another thing. So if you wanted to change the P and the H2 to be centered as well, there's a way you can do this. I'm not sure if you add commas or not. You can check by just testing it. So you can add a comma here, and it puts them all there. Let's see if we do it without commas, if it'll work. No, so you need to add commas. So if you want to add, I'll explain this later. So you could add all the things you want to apply this text align center to. You can add all the elements here with commas. Let's say you didn't add commas. What would happen? It wouldn't work. But there is a way where you do not add commas. It's like if you want to style, let's say you have two H1s in your text, and you just want to style one of the H1s with a class that has a class of bold or a class of text, you do it like this. So this would be this. What this is saying is that you're going to style the H1 element with a class of text to be text align center. But right now we only have one H1 and it doesn't have a class, so we just need to use just one H1. But the actual question here is that we want to do H1, P, and H2, and the order doesn't matter. But we're taking all of these, this H1, P, and H2 that are all in our anywhere in this body, and we're text align center, and they're centering them. So that's great. Okay, you should not change the existing. Okay, so what it wants us to do here is instead of putting commas and doing it all there, I think it wants us to make separate ones for each one. And you can always make, when in doubt, always write more code than you need to when in doubt, because chances are it's gonna work better. But if you can write it succinctly and do it succinctly, do it that way. But I think slowly you get where you can do things quicker and more succinct. But when you're starting, be as verbose as you need to be to actually get the problem solved. So H2 and P. Yeah, so they just wanted us to create 3 separate ones there. And it's probably going to go over the comma section later. Yeah, so they're going to ask us to do the exact same thing that I was mentioning there. Is they want us to take this back and put P and H2. That wants us in order of H1, H2, P. The order doesn't matter, but for this program, it does matter. So yeah. You have styled 3 elements by writing CSS inside the style tags, and I love CSS, but I love Tailwind even more. But I like both. I like styling things. It's when you look at a website and you're like, oh, that's a cool website. It's probably because you're looking at some CSS, because the HTML is just going to be the text and maybe some images and some boxes. But the actual background color and all those cool things are all CSS. So now we've created a separate styles.css file. So now it's going to teach us how to do what we just did with that inline styling. We're going to write those styles in a separate styles.css file. Start by rewriting the styles you've created into the styles.css file. Make sure to exclude the opening and closing style tags. Okay, so when you're actually writing a file, a styles.css file, just starting from line 1, just start writing in what you want to change. And for this, okay, so for an HTML file, you work from the top down. And for a CSS file, you can do the same, but the order doesn't matter on a CSS file. Every single time that for instance, we put H1 and we make it text align center. So that I don't really know what you call it, but that attribute attribute right there, defining what we want that H1 element to do. If we put that on the last line 100, it would still work because it's defining this thing as a single component. So if we wanted to put the H2 above it, if we wanted to put the H2 text align center, it would work as well. So the order, just remember, the order doesn't matter on your CSS file. You just need to define what you want to define within that section, but the order does matter on the HTML file. So we're going to do it with commas because it's faster. Nice. And so what you're doing essentially is what we did here with this style tag that was in our head, which is a way to do it. We just moved it. We moved it to a CSS file. Okay, and I would recommend doing this because if you're gonna write a ton of CSS, it's best to start separating things out because it's gonna get too confusing if you have it all on one page, and especially if you have someone else trying to read it, they're not gonna know where the hell they might know it, but it's gonna make their life harder. So you want to separate it. You don't have to, but I'd recommend it. Now that you have the CSS and the styles.css, go ahead and remove the style element and all its content. So we're just going to what we'd added before in the HTML document. We're going to remove that from the HTML. We're going to the HTML document. Remove that. If I'm going too fast, leave a comment and either I'll go slower in my videos, or we'll do one step per video, or we can just break it down even more, or I can do free or maybe $10 an hour training sessions with you or whatever. It all depends on your learning style and where you are in your coding journey, because it can be confusing and sometimes it's not fun if you get matched with the wrong person that's trying to teach you and it doesn't click well. It just doesn't work. And I know that I don't click well with some people and some people don't click well with me. So I'd hope that the people that stick around for this video are the ones that actually enjoy learning from me and that have that same idea about trying to learn this to better themselves and better their career or their vocation. So yeah. Okay, next is now you need to link the styles.css file so the styles will be applied again. So basically, when you write the inline CSS, it does it automatically in the style. You write the style tag and then you add the CSS. But since we're making the styles.css file of its own, you have to link that styles.css file to your HTML file. So you do that with a style tag, and then you say give it a relative attribute. And usually I just copy and paste this. I go find this on W3 Schools and paste it in. I paste this all in myself. I don't memorize any of this. I just get it all set up and then start copying and pasting stuff to build a bunch of components. So you don't have to have this all memorized. Just know what you need. It's not knowing how to do it. It's like exactly how to do it. It's knowing what you need and where to get it, and then how to use it. But actually knowing everything, you're knowing what to do. So you are knowing. You're not memorizing basically. You're not memorizing just pure code. You're knowing what to do and you're reading the code correctly. So you're reading it by components. You're reading it line by line, and just think it worked down. Nesting line by line, working from the top down. There's all kinds of strategies to try to get your head around this. Like I said, eventually, if you do it enough, and you are getting people to teach you from all over, and you're kind of having focus about you're sorting it out, and you're figuring it out, you're eventually going to just know it yourself, and you're going to know, and you have a general idea of what's going on. But the more complexity you add, the more things you test, you're going to create too many moving parts, and you're not going to be able to figure out when your code doesn't load. You're not going to know what caused it because you change too many things. So always change one thing at a time. You do something, make sure it works. If it works, go to the next thing. If it works, go to the next thing. If it doesn't work, fix that thing. Do not start doing other things until you fix that thing. So fix that thing and then go to the next thing. Always fix and next thing. Don't start leaving things unfixed and then slowly moving away from what you were trying to do. Fix things as you go. Okay, and that's how you learn coding. So that's the way I would do it. Maybe there's other ways to do it, but I would say most people that understand this probably learned it in a similar way to me. So give it a relative attribute with the value of style sheet, and an href. So the href is always what you're linking to. So it works in a tags, it works in the style tag, and what it's telling you is what file to link to. So for instance, this is telling us to link to this styles.css, which exists in the same folder as the HTML file. You always want to put your styles probably in the same folder. You can put it anywhere you want. If it was in a different folder, like I said before, you'd use things like this. If it was in a styles folder, you'd link it like that with maybe a dot at the beginning. You have to test it to see if that works or not. I'm not totally sure on that, but we're just putting it in the same folder. So that doesn't work. Does it need to be one thing? Okay, style. Should have a link element. Oh, this isn't a style element. It's a link element. Yeah, that's how you do it. So if you're actually adding an inline, it's a style element. I'm learning as I go as well. If you're doing it as a if you're doing the CSS inline in your HTML document, you make a style element and then you do it inside there. But since we're doing a link element, we're going to link to the styles folder. The link element so it's a void element. It doesn't have a closing tag. There we go. Now, add the following within the head. So now we're adding a meta name viewport with. So I think this is just for mobile screens. It's not. I don't know what happens if you don't include this, but it's just a formality. You want to include everything possible you can include in your head because chances are it's going to help you with SEO and not in terms of it's not going to get people clicking on your site in and of itself. But what it will do is get your site a chance to be seen. So it will give you a better chance of being seen by others. Now, is there ever a guarantee that you're going to be the best looking person in the room or you're going to be the smartest in the room or that you're going to be the most clickable person in the room? No. But there's ways to maximize your chances of people seeing you. Like it's like going around running around public naked. People are going to see you. And so that's what you're doing here. You're trying to be seen by people in the most appropriate way on the internet. And so you do that by including a nice title that describes what that page is. a nice meta description, which describes what's happening on that page. And you do that for every single page on your site, giving each page a chance to rank. So you want to give each page on your site a chance to rank. For instance, the Coders website has over 100,000 pages, and we're still indexing them. But that means that each one of those pages can rank for a title, keyword within a title or a description. All 100,000 of them. So you're maximizing your chances of ranking by making a bunch of pages. Now, you don't want to get over. I've kind of overdone it with that, and you don't want to overdo it. But like creating lots of blogs, lots of products, if you're running an e-commerce site, things like that, it's always good to add a title and meta description for all those pages. And the better you, and there's actually ways, if you're running a Rails website, the way we did it is you can actually automate that whole process where it automates the title, and there's all kinds of automations you can do. They're not automations, they're shortcuts by using frameworks. So this is all blue collar stuff that we're doing here. So yeah. All right, the text is centered again, so the link to the CSS file is working. Add another style to the file that changes the background property to brown and for the body. So right now we're going to change the body, which is this entire document. We're going to make it background color, which is the attribute, and we're going to give it a brown color. There we go. So this does the whole background. Very nice. That background color makes it hard to read the text. Change the body element's background color to burly wood. So there's two ways to do this. See how the text is kind of hard to read? You can make the text white, or put the text in a div and give it a background of it in and of itself, or you can just change the whole background of the color of the whole thing to burly wood. That's nice. Now we're going to add the div. The div is the most important element, in my opinion, in all of HTML. It's the most used. It's the thing you're going to use more than anything. And when you dive into people's code, you're going to see divs within divs within divs, nesting of divs, which I'm going to do a whole video about div nesting because I think it's important to learn. It's something that took me a while to learn, and it's something that if you're going to start working on someone else's code base, you're going to see tons of nested divs, and it's going to be very hard to figure out what's going on. So I'd recommend using a text editor that actually shows you which opening tag div is connected to which closing tag div, so you know where you are. You don't get lost in the code. That is the best way to do it. But for now, I would recommend writing your own divs and writing your own code because if you're trying to work off someone else's, it's going to be if there's so much nesting going on, you're not going to have any idea what's going on. Even if you're smart enough, we're talking about seriously mentally straining and activities that are not worth it. You should just write it from scratch yourself and make sure it's as simple as possible. All right. The div element is used mainly for design layout purposes. Unlike the other content elements you've used so far, add a div element inside the body element and then move all other elements inside the new div. So we're going to put a div. Inside the opening div, add the ID attribute for menu. ID equals menu. Okay. The div should be nested in the body. Okay. They want the div to be the main to be in the div. I think that's what they're asking. Let's see. Yeah. So with a div, then the main. Not exactly how I do it, but that's what they're asking for. Next, they want to use the menu, so the div that we made, use the menu selector to give your element a width of 300 pixels. Let's see what we named the div. The div is ID menu right here. So we're going to call that ID with hashtag menu and then make it a width of 300 pixels. Now let's check that out. So I don't like that strategy, but that's what they're asking. So let's see if that's, yeah. We're just learning theory here, but we're doing it with hands-on stuff. So now we're going to comment out something. We're going to, in your style, so this is how you do comments. Commenting out things just makes it where it doesn't actually render on the screen, but you keep the code just in case you want to use it later. So in your style sheet, comment out the line containing the background color and value so you can see the effect of the only style in the menu. So this and this. So yeah, so we commented out the background color, so there's no background color now. Okay. Now use the existing menu selector to set the background color of the div element to Burlywood. So we're going to change now we're going to put the background color within the div, and we're going to make it background color. And I'll be honest, just doing this course is not enough. You need to start practicing things on your own and testing things on your own. That's how I got to where I am. You just got to test stuff and over again and try everything and become obsessed. So that's the way, and to within reason. So the reason that did that is because, for instance, if we didn't have this 300 pixels here, it would fill up that whole space. And something I want to check here is, so what we're doing here is, let's get this done. So that's the standard size of the div. The standard size of a div is going to be what's in the div. It's going to be usually default of fitting what is in the content. So if we wanted to change that, since we're working in here, we could make it height screen. Is it screen? Full. Let's height 900 pixels. Yeah. Let's try. So 900, see, I can change the height there by just adding that. Or if I want to make it, I think full. No, screen. So your best friend here is the, I think it's the Mozilla docs. So we'll do height CSS. The MDN docs, use these will help a lot. So these are the ways you can define height. So you can do pixels, EMs, VH, or like percentages. So if we did 100%, max content, min content, fit content. So we'll do, if we did height 75%. It doesn't like that for some reason. Why doesn't it like that? There might be limitations based on this IDE because it's free code camp and they have their own way of doing it. Let's try IMS. Yeah, so that works as well. IMS works as well. 800 pixels. Yeah, let's see if we did 400 pixels. Yeah, so you get the idea. But what we're doing for this is width, was it 300 pixels? Yeah. Nice. That works. Now it's easy to see that the text is centered inside the main menu element. Currently, the width of the menu element is specified in pixels. Change the width properties value to 80%. There you go. It's 80% of the screen. Now you want to center the menu horizontally. You can do this by setting the margin left and margin right properties to auto. Think of the margin as an invisible space around the element. Using these two margin properties, center the menu within the body. So margin left, we're going to make as auto, and margin right is auto. Another way to do this that I think works as well is just margin auto. Let's try that. Yeah, that works as well. So margin auto or margin left auto, margin right auto, however you want to do it. Like I said, testing is your best friend here. Okay, next, change the existing menu selector into a class selector by replacing menu with the class named menu. So if we go back to our HTML, we see that div, the ID is menu. But if we added a class instead of an ID or had both, and wanted to use a class selector, you can use class as well. So it's something I explained before, but you do menu. It just does that. And right now it's not working because we haven't added the class yet to the HTML. But it's a start. So now we have to go back into the HTML, and it says to apply this, make sure to set the class value to menu. Remove the ID. So removing the ID and just making it a class. So class or ID, just different ways of doing the same thing. It's just a way of defining it. But when you use class, you need to use a dot and then the class in your CSS. And when you're using an ID, you need to use a hashtag and then your ID in the CSS. Since the cafe menu's product for sale is coffee, you can use an image of coffee beans to the background of the page. So what we're going to do is delete the comment inside the body and now add a background image property and set its value to that. So we're going to do background image. This is an important one to learn because you're probably going to need this. So if you want to change the whole screen background to something, you use background image and then URL this. Boom. There you have a background now. Nice. And as you can see, we're starting to make some progress here on really styling this. So it's looking good. Time to start adding some menu items. Add an empty article element under the coffee. It will contain a flavor and a price of each coffee you currently offer. Okay. So that's good for this video, and we will continue with the next video.